Well, hello everyone. So James here. On today's video, I wanted to start a new series called Programming for Dummies. I'm gonna try to distill complex programming topics in relation to powerlifting and strength training into a bit of a simpler to understand type of series. I'm doing this because I want to give some value to my channel other than just my lifting journey, and I'm in a really good mood because I also hit a triplet front squat recently, which, wow, that was a goal that I had for a while. So anyway, I'm in a really good mood. I want to make something that is kind of give me back, and hey, maybe I can help someone, so why not? So anyway, by the way, I'm very likely gonna continue this series. We'll see how that goes, but for now, we're just gonna start with the first episode of Programming for Dummies, Powerlifting and Strength Edition, and this one is gonna be for novices. So I guess the first thing is, what is a novice? You have probably heard that a novice is someone who has been training for less than 2 years. I don't particularly like that definition simply because a lot of people do things wrong in their first years, and sometimes they do it so wrong that they don't really make the progress that you will expect them to do based on their potential. So to me, that doesn't really say much. So here is how we'll go about it. What you are looking on screen right now is the EXRX chart. This looks at basically a bunch of people who have put their logs and they kind of filter it. But basically, they have given some type of standards for intermediate and advanced and elite and novice. But they're not perfect, which I think you can see it. Basically, when it comes to strength, you can think of it like a bell curve. There are going to be people who are going to be average, which are going to be most people. There are going to be people who are going to be below average. And then there are going to be people above average. And some of them are really above average. And those are the guys that you're going to see at IPF Worlds or at World's Strongest Man or stuff along those lines. Most of you are not going to get there, but that shouldn't stop you from trying to be the best version of you. So, when you're looking at this chart and you're looking at the body weight, ideally you want to look at that body weight at a BMI of around 25 to 27. So for example, if you are 180 centimeters, you will be looking at the standards of between the 82 and the 90 kilogram weight class, right? If you are 73 centimeters, you will be looking at the standards between the 67 and the 75 kilogram weight class. The reason for this is that it is quite possible to be underweight, and that will actually give you numbers that may look easier to hit, but you are not going to be at that body weight because that body weight is, quite frankly, the product of a muscle deficiency. So because muscle kind of weighs you down, you're going to want to compare yourself to the higher standards. And same thing goes if you're really overweight, because you're probably going to be losing weight during your first year of training. You want to be comparing yourself to the standards that more closely resemble your stature and that are a closer representation, so to speak. So if you are say 140 kilograms and your BMI of 27, for example, is at a body weight of 100 kilograms, then rather than looking at the standards for 140 kilograms, you can just go ahead and look at the standards for 100 kilograms. Alright, so that caveat out of the way, I will say that if you're within 10% of these numbers, that's probably accurate. Again, there are going to be freaks, but I think that for most people, these numbers will line up quite nicely. Here you can see the numbers for the deadlift. I'm gonna show the ones for men and women, the numbers for the squat, again for men and women. I think they have a few other lifts on their website, so you can feel free to go and check it out if you are curious about something else. Regardless, I'm just putting them here for illustrative purposes. So, what are some of the main considerations when it comes to novices? The first one, novices can easily recover from high levels of effort put into compound movements. If not, chances are something is wrong and you need to consult with a physician. But assuming that you are a healthy human, there is a good chance that you can recover from high levels of effort that you can put into the comp of movements. So recovery doesn't really take as much of a factor. Generally speaking, around training every other day or like 2 days on, 1 day off, that can give you plenty of recovery time as a novice. But again, there are other considerations that you have to take into account later down the line, but we're not going to talk about them in this video. Next, novices don't need a lot of volume or variation to grow optimally. Basically, less is more. As a novice, everything you're doing is a novel stimuli. Even if you have been training properly, it's still not necessary for you to use a lot of volume or variation. You can just take a small amount and actually see really good results out of that because your body is just not accustomed to that stimuli. Next, neurological adaptations will make up the first chunk of strength gains. Hence, more frequency may be better. So I said before that less is more, and that's absolutely true when it comes to volume and variation. But when it comes to frequency, we want to get those movement patterns installed in our system, in our nervous system, such that we can actually get the neurological efficiency from it, and that way we can get the musculature involved and we can actually start forcing the body to adapt to further changes in that weight on the bar. Basically, when you start training, the first progression that you do, it's mostly the result of neurological adaptations, right? After a certain point, your body can no longer adapt its way neurologically to lift more weight, so it starts to put on muscle. So a higher frequency can get you over that phase of neurological adaptations quicker, which is gonna allow you to start making those gains faster. To put it simply, novices can build muscle in a deficit provided they have enough storages to do so. As we said before, like if you are starting at 130 pounds and if you are starting at say 60 kilograms and you are like say 180 centimeters, yeah, you're underweight. You're not really gonna be building muscle in a deficit or at maintenance. You actually have to eat, you have to bulk up. If you are starting at say again 180 centimeters but you are starting at 140 kilograms, you have plenty of fat storages to build muscle, so you can build muscle perfectly fine in a deficit. So you can look at your situation. I will say if you are below a BMI of like 25, there is a good chance you can build muscle in a deficit. If you are above that, if you are below a BMI of 25, there is a good chance you cannot build muscle in the deficit and you should either start at maintenance or in a bulk. If you're above that, there is a good chance that you can build some amount of muscle in a deficit. And lastly, the last consideration for novices is that everything is a fucking weak point. Your entire body is weak. You don't have to worry about, oh, am I gonna have to like train my back with this angle or this angle to better target the dorsi or the lats. It's like, no, everything is weak. Any movement that you do for the back is gonna target the entire thing. So you don't really have to worry about that. You're a pebble right now. You kind of have to like grow into a big boulder, and then you can start chiseling that boulder into however you want to chisel it. But you can't really do that with a pebble. Okay, so what is strength? Now, I'm not 100% sure if I'm the one who came up with this division. Maybe someone else did. If so, I probably read it somewhere and I can't really remember who that was. If you have seen this from somewhere else, maybe leave a comment. There is a chance that I'm taking it from somewhere without noticing, but to my knowledge, this is mine. So, raw strength. Raw strength is your strength base. It's dictated by muscular and neurological adaptations without the involvement of technical efficiency. Then there is the specific strength. The specific strength It's basically the strength peak in a specific movement dictated by raw strength and movement specific technical proficiency. Let me put this into a context. Say you are taken to a coffee factory and you are asked to move a bunch of coffee bags. If you have never done that before, you're probably just gonna like try to manhandle the bags. Basically, you're not really gonna go for the quote unquote most optimal way to move those bags. You're just gonna pick something up, move it around, and take it to wherever you have to take it to in that coffee factory. Anyway, so that's a raw strength. You're not really practicing it. It's not really like a movement that you have like perfected your technique in. No, it's just like that's what your raw strength production is. Then there is the specific strength. This is when you take strength and you apply it through a given range of motion on a given joint angle on a given lift. So for example, a sumo deadlift, it has a specific joint angles at the hip, at the knee, at the back. It also has a specific range of motion. You know, you're going up to lockout from the ground, minus whatever you're getting out of the whip of the bar, but it's very specific in nature. So that's what we mean with a specific strength. Now, both raw strength and specific strength are dictated by the musculature in your body. So musculature is gonna increase your raw strength potential, and by increasing your raw strength potential, you're gonna increase your specific strength potential. Now, the important thing to know here is that as a novice, all of these things are gonna happen instantaneously. They're gonna happen concurrently, not necessarily instantaneously. If you do a bench press, that's gonna stimulate all of the musculature necessary for the bench press. So it's gonna help you build a base of raw strength, and it's gonna also help you build a base of specific strength because you're doing the movement, so you're getting more neurologically efficient at it on the given cues as you practice it more and more and more and more. Alright, so let's get into programming. So when it comes to a split, 3 to 4 times a week is plenty. I do not recommend more than that. You want to take those recovery days. That's where the magic happens. That's when you're really getting stronger. So upper lower 2 times a week or full body 3 times per week are ideal. Between those two, I will go with full body just because it's easier to program. It's more evenly distributed across the different days. And there is also the advantage that, first of all, it's only 3 days in the gym, so you're not taking as long. It's just as efficient, and you're getting more frequency because you're training 3 times per week versus 2 times per week per movement pattern. Alright, so when it comes to the exercise selection, we're gonna prioritize compound multi-joint barbell movements. These are the best for developing strength because they're teaching your body to work in conjunction. They are teaching multiple muscles to perform a given pattern, which is what we're going for when we are developing strength. We're gonna keep isolation work to a minimum simply because it's not really needed, and at a certain point it's kind of it's just not necessary for you to grow at this stage anyways. Simply because the compound movements are also going to give volume to the muscles that you're trying to isolate. It's a good idea to isolate some muscles, but generally speaking, you don't have to worry too much about it. When it comes to the reps and sets, around 10 sets per movement pattern per week is enough. There are studies where they have shown that the ideal level of volume is anywhere from 10 sets to 20 sets. In my opinion, it's better to start with the minimum effective dosage, and even 10 sets is probably a bit even 10 sets, like we can go a little bit below that, but around that ballpark is per week is the goal basically. Maybe 9-8 is not that big of a deal, but somewhere in that range. Next, when it comes to rep ranges, 10 to 15 rep range for isolation work. Now 10 to 15 can mean different things, but in this context it just means, say you do it for with a given body weight, you go up to 15, and once you are at 15 for the whatever amount of sets you're doing, then you progress by the minimum amount. But anyway, I'm gonna remind you guys that in a bit. So 10 to 15 rep range for isolation work, 5 to 8 rep range, 5 to 8 rep range for compounds, and sets below 5 count as half set for hypertrophy purposes. This is not to say that sets below 5 are useless or that you need to do twice as many. You don't need to do twice as many, not necessarily. But it does mean that with a few exceptions, mainly the deadlift, but not really now, later. Generally speaking, when it comes to like building that base, we want to stay a bit above 5 just so that a hard set actually counts as a hard set. We also don't want to go up too much with 15, especially in iron compounds. I would say 5 to 8 is enough, otherwise you can get like your cardiovascular system to be a limiting factor. 10 to 15 for isolation purposes is better, simply so you can actually get more out of less weight. Which is important because without a really wide base, you're not gonna be able to use that much weight on isolation work anyways. So there are four main movement patterns that are gonna be trained through strength training. Those are the press, row, hinge, and squat. So a press can include anything from an incline bench press to a regular bench press to a overhead press to even a dip. It's basically a movement pattern that is working your chest, is working your deltoids, and is working your triceps. Rows, basically they are movements for the back, specifically the dorsi, the lats, and to some degree the traps as well. So in the row category, you can have stuff like pull-ups, you can have stuff like T-bar rows, you can have a chest-supported row machine, you can also have a seal row, stuff along those lines. Hinges is a stuff for the posterior chain, which includes the hamstrings, the glutes, and the lower back. So on hinges, you're gonna have stuff like back extensions, good mornings, you're gonna have deadlifts, you're also gonna have RDLs, aka fake deadlifts, stuff along those lines. And squats, you get the point. It's more of a leg. It's a leg type of movement pattern, but it's more anterior focus. So it's focused more on the quad. So this can include a low bar squat, a high bar squat, a front squat, stuff along those lines. A safety bar squat. You get the point. When it comes to the exercise order, we're gonna start with the compounds that we're gonna go for on that given session. It could be 2, it could be 3, that depends on how you are splitting things up. But we start with the compounds, we then go on to the isolation work. It could be 2, it could be 3, again, it depends on how you are splitting things up. In either case, I recommend you have an A-B setup with different exercises on each day. The reason for that is to change the stimuli slightly and to not like pack a whole lot of stuff into a given session, which can happen if you are doing the exact same thing every single workout. So with an A-B setup, you get enough variation as a novice, but as you progress, this is one of those factors. Once you're past the intermediate stage, this is one of those factors that will change. As far as rest time, 3 to 5 minutes in between is enough. And as far as warm-ups, you don't really have to do anything to elaborate, just doing the same exercise, maybe with the empty bar and then like half the weight that you're gonna be using. So for example, if you're gonna go into a 100 kilogram squat, and maybe you can start with the empty bar, then you can do like a few like easy sets with 60, then like one easy set with 80, and then you can go into your working sets, stuff along those lines, and take 3 to 5 minutes in between sets. Generally speaking, more than 5 minutes doesn't really get you more, it just makes the training take longer. And less than 3 minutes, you haven't really recovered properly within series. So you want to get your motor neurons to be fully recovered between the sets. So that's probably a reason why you want to go for 3 to 5 minutes, generally speaking. But again, when you're starting out and it feels super easy, you can definitely go for 2 or 2.5 minutes and then increase the time from there. So here are some sample templates. Here is a full body one. You can see the A, high bar squat, 5x5, bench press, 5x5, T-bar row, 4x8, tricep pull down, 10 to 15, blah, blah, blah. When you see the 10 to 15, obviously it means that you are doing a given weight and then you are increasing by the minimum amount, which we're going to cover in a little bit. But this is, for example, a sample that you can actually follow it if you want, whatever, it doesn't matter too much. So you can get an idea of what these principles can look like on paper. And here is one with upper lower. This is the reason why I said that I prefer the full body to the upper lower, mainly because during the upper days you're going to be training both your chest and your back. So in a sense, whereas for the lower movement, the hinges and the squat do blend in quite well, whereas for the upper movement they are kind of antagonists that don't really blend in. So with an upper lower split you have to do almost twice as much on upper days than lower days, which maybe that works better for your schedule, but yeah, I still prefer the full body just because it's more evenly distributed and you're having a bit higher frequency. So anyway, that's what you can see here. Now when it comes to how you program it, again, you want to give yourself time to recover between sessions, so 3 times a week or 4 times a week is plenty. In the case of a full body, you can just do, for example, Tuesday day 8 and Thursday day B, then on Saturday you add weight. You repeat it, well, you do the day A, but you add weight to it, and then on Tuesday you do the day B, but then you add weight to it, and so on and so on. Same thing for the upper lower. Now when it comes to weight increments, for compound lifts, in general, as a rule of thumb, if you are not familiar with the RPE scale, 2.5 kilograms per session, in general. So yeah, that's in total, by the way, so 1.25 kilograms per side. I highly recommend you get microplates if you don't have them, because they're gonna be really useful here. Otherwise, you're gonna have to incorporate some type of evolving rep range or evolving set range, or a mixture of the two, like I have done with some people that I have coached and with myself. Basically, you change a few of those things, but in general, if you can, this is probably one of the best ways, you just add a little bit per session. Now, I said 2.5 kilograms. Here's the thing, right? If you want to customize this, I will say to go 2.5 kilograms per point on the RPE scale below 8. So, what does this mean? If the RPE for the session was 8, you had 2.5 kilograms. If it was 7, you had 5 kilograms. If it was 6 or below that, you can add 7.5 kilograms. This is not a perfect system because that jump can be relatively high. So when in doubt, just add 2.5 kilograms. If you are not familiar with the RPE scale, if you have never used it before, just add 2.5 kilograms. Don't bother trying to like put a cap and like set the RPE and like organize the weight. No, just add 2.5 kilograms. Don't bother. Don't really worry about it. But if you're familiar with the scale, this is a way that it can be used. Now, set the 7.5 kilograms is mostly used for lower body movements. For upper body movements, you may want to just add 2.5 kilograms regardless, or maybe cap it at 5 kilograms. Now, on isolation. For isolation work, a minimum weight increase that is possible based on the setup. So if you are doing a cable stack, that is like the next block. If you are doing something like a skull crusher, then you just add weight to the bar. But you know, the minimum amount. So you do the minimum weight increase that you can after you have hit the top end of the desired rep range for all of the sets. So if you say 3 for 10 to 15, so 3 sets of 10 to 15 reps, once you have been able to do 3 sets of 15 reps, you add a little bit of weight and then you repeat the process, right? Then you try to get 15 with those, and once you can get 15 with that new weight, you add more weight, and so on and so forth. If you are picking heavy stuff, so you can pick heavier stuff. So what if you plateau? Well, a plateau happens if you haven't gained strength in 3 or more consecutive sessions of the same type, and for the sake of argument, let's say that you are able to pinpoint the stuff. But whatever. So for example, you have been training for 3 weeks and your bench has been stuck on 70 kilograms by 5. On 70 kilograms for 5 sets of 5. You add 2.5 kilograms and you fail reps. You add 2.5 kilograms, you immediately fail reps. If you're in that and you have tried that and then you added the weight, so you repeated that session and then you repeat it again and then you repeat it again, you just cannot progress, you are in a plateau. So here's the thing, right? The intermediate standards, they are not perfect, as I mentioned before. However, if you are within 10% of the intermediate standards, there is a chance that you have outgrown your novice stage. In this case, it's simply time for you to move on to an intermediate program. I'm not gonna cover intermediate programming on this video, but you can look that up if you want to. But basically, if you're in that position, this video is just not meant for you. Alright, if you haven't done that, then I will recommend that you deload 10 to 15% and then you build back up slowly and steady. And as you build back up, you're also gonna try to assess your recovery factors, such as your nutrition. So have you been shredded? Have you been 130 pounds at 6 feet tall the entire time, and that's the reason that you haven't been progressing anymore? Have you been getting 3 hours on sleep because of whatever reason, and is that something you can work on? I don't know, is there some type of stress factor that is just really throwing you off? So assess your recovery factors as you build back up. Now, if you have assessed your recovery factors, so you know that it's not related to nutrition, sleep, or stress, and you have had to build back up multiple times, let's just say 3, 4, or 5 times, around that ballpark, then there is a chance that you have outgrown the novice stage, regardless of where your 1 rep max is or where your strength level is right now. This is important to consider because not everyone has the same strength potential, not everyone has the same genetics. If we go back to a chart, let's look at the deadlift, for example. So what if you are, say, 82 kilograms, right? And the intermediate stage is 140 kilograms, 142 and a half, but you are at, say, 120 kilograms. And you just cannot do anything else. You have tried everything, you have improved, and you are just stuck at 120. In that case, you have simply outgrown your novice stage. You need to go into an intermediate program to keep making progress. So anyway, that's as far as the what if you plateau section. Finally, additional resources. I don't want to confuse you too much by giving you resources to a bunch of different people that are going to tell you different things. But if you want to check out some resources that you could use a hand of with a critical eye, that is, I'm going to recommend you guys 2 resources that I'm going to put in the description, and those are going to be Strong Lifts 5x5. They have a bunch of information on the page that you can learn from. And I'm also going to take you to Alpha Destiny YouTube channel. I have learned a lot from him, and he has a lot of content that has been directed for novices. He also has a novice program. There is probably a lot that you can learn there, so I'm also gonna put him in the description. The only reason that I'm not giving you more resources is because I don't want you to get confused or to get paralysis by analysis or stuff along those lines. So yeah, that's what we're getting. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know if you want to see more of it. And yeah, the next one is probably gonna be programming for either intermediates or how I got a triple front squat. One of the two. Anyways, see you guys next time. Bye bye.